Now, one of our business leaders, very prominent man, has sent me a letter that he'd got that was frightening, really, and to me it read like a blackmail note. Now, this letter was from one of the big industry superannuation funds, and I'm told others do much the same sort of thing as this. They're using tens of billions of dollars of their members, that their members have to pay in super, to these funds, and using that money to push their own ideological war. Now, this particular letter is from HESTA. That's the Health Industry Superfund. And it was sent to the biggest 300 companies on our stock exchange. And to give you some context, the chairman of HESTA is Nicola Roxon. She's a former Labor Attorney General in the Gillard government. Now, this letter warns these companies that it manages the retirement savings of more than 950,000 Australians and over $68 billion of assets under management, money that invests in many such companies. In fact, there's probably $1 trillion sloshing around from these industry super funds. And then comes the threat. HESTA plans to use that money to force these companies to push policies of the left, particularly on global warming. For the members' own good, of course, a healthy planet for their own members. It says, as part of the ASX 300, your company has a key role in mitigating climate risk and reducing emissions. In Australia, we urge Australian companies to set and deliver a verified climate strategy. It's not actually just a polite suggestion. It doesn't just demand these companies cut emissions, by the way, and who knows at what cost. It also wants them to fight supposed social inequality issues, set gender balance targets, offer flexible work practices, have equitable recruitment policies. However, that's now defined, what with identity politics. They've got to fight insecure work, which means using fewer contractors that a lot of companies find more efficient, and to offer appropriate working conditions and rights, whoever decides that. Plus, they must campaign against the loss of nature. And if these companies dare refuse, HESTA warns it will escalate action against them, putting them on a name and shame watch list, voting against directors who don't play ball, and perhaps even dumping the shares. Joining me is National Senator Matt Canavan, the former Resources Minister. Matt Canavan, this reads to me like blackmail. Go left or we'll punish you with the super savings of our members.
Yeah, well, Andrew, it is, and it's a pattern of behaviour we're seeing across the corporate sector, across the corporate world here, where the corporate state, if you like, is trying to become the entire state. Corporations have a dedicated role in our economy, in our country. They're in fact given enormous amounts of protection, especially around limited liability. Can't go after their assets if they go broke. And they're expected to because of those benefits, to have certain obligations. The prime obligation a corporation has is to maximise the value for its shareholders. That's its fundamental duty under the law. And I question here really whether some of these companies are adhering to corporations law, because in this letter that you've discovered here, the super fund says, look, we would like you to give shareholder value for our members, but we've also got these other things we need you to concentrate on. And as you say, they are a laundry list of sort of the best wishes of the left-wing parties of this country. They don't talk about, of course, anything to do with we'd like you to be patriotic Australians or we'd like you to help defend our country. None of that. None of that. It is all of these globalist causes that have become the latest fad of the left. And I would love our corporations to get back to doing what they have to under the law, to being good businesses. If you're a renewable energy business, be a good renewable energy business. If you're a coal business, be a good coal business. And if you're in the health sector, just look after us. Because, when you think about it, Andrew, anybody of your viewers, do you reckon our health system is going that well that the health super fund can spend their time trying to change the temperature of the globe? Or perhaps they should look a little bit more closer to home?
Matt, I've got a better one for you. If viewers are actually wondering, how this actually works, what I'm calling blackmail here, right? How it works, how it affects you. We have just had a perfect example, and it's an ugly one. HESTA owns shares in our oldest electricity company, AGL, and has been pushing it to get rid of its coal-fired power stations. Now, last week, AGL said, all right, we're going to close, we're already closing one in New South Wales. We're now also going to close Victoria's biggest coal-fired power station, Loy Yang A, 10 years early. So that's 30% of Victoria's electricity gone out of the system by 2035. Now, Matt Canavan, how can a super fund excuse that kind of meddling in a power system they cannot possibly properly understand, citing global warming science, so-called, that seems to me extremely faulty, given that any emissions cuts we make in Australia makes no difference to their Australian members?
Well, Andrew, it's always the errors of zealots. The zealots always become obsessed by one thing, and therefore the compromise of any other principle is justified to pursue this overall goal they have. And the zealots on the left of politics have convinced themselves that somehow the world is going to combustibly explode in the next 10 years. So traducing any kind of law or principle or fiduciary value is worth it to save what they think is an existential threat to humanity. It's just ridiculous. But I think what the message for my side of politics in particular here, Andrew, is we've got to get tough here, and we've got to break out, I suppose, of our traditional shackles, where on the Conservative side of politics, we support business. I want to see a thriving businesses, and I want to give business the opportunity to operate on their own principles. But that doesn't mean we should support corporations like this. This is not business. This is activism. This is a form of corporate communism, if you like, as I've termed it. And we should be against that because we should be supporting those businesses that are trying to operate and survive in our country, not having to deal with this kind of blackmail where some very influential corporations seek to extend their influence beyond the business sector, effectively to the political sphere, because ultimately this will undermine democracy. These decisions about climate change, about gender diversity, deserve to be decided by the broader electorate, not by those who have the money and wealth in our super funds or banks. And the banking sector and corporate sector, large corporate sector here, is trying to undermine our democracy and disenfranchise many of those people who do not have their voice and influence, but would have an equal vote at the ballot box.
Matt Canavan, what did we used to call a state that was run by big unions, big business, big government, and made all the decisions away from the democratic sphere? I fancy we used to call it fascist. This, I think, is the incipient fascism. We're clearly not there yet, but the trend is ugly. Matt Canavan, thank you so much for your time.